A warm welcome to the treatment room. And this week's hot topics, we're going to dip into onboarding, what to measure and why, and then linking your vision and feedback. So, Andy, an interesting series of conversations we've had over the last couple of weeks, which bring us to these three hot topics. So where should we get started?
I think we start with onboarding, Phil, because, we've, over the last few we've talked a lot on podcasts around recruitment. And what we've noticed actually is an awful lot of the conversations we're having that people have recruited and they're actually bringing new people on board. So for me, to talk personally, that it was something which certainly start of my leadership career didn't quite get it right. I.e., well, you must know what you're doing. Here's a t-shirt, crack on. And then you realize that actually it's a little bit more complex than that. I know you've, from the corporate world, they're very good at that, aren't they? But well, I've made a massive assumption that they're good at it. They do it. I don't know if they're good at it.
Yeah, I would say not all of them are.
Yeah.
And I think some of the practicalities and learning points that we pick up talking to therapy business owners will map across into some organizations who just assume that you've got 5 years experience, so you can just walk in and pick the tools up and carry on regardless. And that is nearly always a mistake.
And I guess from you then, obviously spending most of your career out of industry and then jumping 2 feet in and living in it now, where do you see that a lot of we could get it better? What, in your experience, when listening, what is it that you think naturally, young leaders in the industry or new to leadership, what is it that they could do or improve, do you think?
Well, I think for me, in smaller organizations, induction, onboarding, call it what you will, helping an individual make a really smooth entry into your organization, into your business, and then becoming effective and high performing as quick as possible is the magic, is the key that a business owner would be looking for. In larger organizations, to some extent, there's always people around. So if you don't if you don't get the advice and information, or you don't know where to look, there might be 20 people who would know who to go and talk to. And in smaller organizations, obviously there are fewer people, but it also means it's not always that obvious, because if you say 2 or 3 of us have been working together for a while, it's a bit like a family in a sense, because things get done without anybody even mentioning them or even asking. And the things that don't get done, somebody else will usually go and sort out without asking. But as a new person coming into that environment, it's like people talking a different language. So actually, just even understanding that as a business owner. So if I've got 5 years experience as a qualified and experienced physio, and I've been working somewhere else, then walking into your business, certainly I'll have you'd hope, because the recruitment and the selection process would have identified that I do know what I'm talking about, and I've got more than the certificates to prove it.
Yeah.
So you would hope that what's going to go on within the treatment room itself would be to a professional standard. But everything else in your business is unique to your business. And that's the bit that we tend to forget. So I use the analogy for me, which albeit a few years ago now, still lives long in my memory. And it's a bit like, your first day at school, taking in your sandwich box and your satchel or your bag or whatever it was, and not even knowing where to put any of that, and not knowing who your classmates were, and having to get to know the teacher. So if you think, okay, the teacher is the business owner, classmates will be other people in your organization, but you still don't know what to do when you walk through the door. So the smoother you can make that entry. So for me, onboarding and induction starts immediately. I say, Andy, congratulations, I'd like to offer you the job. induction has started at that point,
Yeah.
even though it might be 1 week, 3 months before
Yeah.
you actually join us. The relationship has started. So the smoother we can make it for people to understand where they sit and how they perform, and where to put the lunchbox, and where the toilets are, and how the systems, the core systems in your business run, the better. And sometimes even sitting down to think about all of that stuff is a bit mind-boggling if it's all obvious to you, because it's you're unconsciously, you're not even aware within your organization about some of the things that happen and some of the things you do, because you do them on autopilot. It's a bit like driving a car. Most of what we do when we drive a car, we do without necessarily thinking about the mechanics of doing it. So actually thinking about what are the mechanical points on induction become important. It's a bit like the 10-step journey that you talk about. What's the 10-step journey for a good induction process? What are those relationships? What are those points? So that's where I would get started, I think, Andy.
No, I think some really, really good points in there. And I think if you are listening to this and you're thinking, gosh, I don't have one of these, then, I would certainly, if you are looking, if you are on board and now or looking to onboard, then I would certainly make some time to, like Phil said, document a process, even if it's just you translating things out of your head down onto some kind of piece of paper in some way, so you can have a process that you can follow and show other people and articulate in a way. And I think it's also accept that is it fair to say that most people won't get it 100% right first time? That it's all right. It's going to be.
I'm not sure that we ever get induction right, because the other thing is, of course, if you could put a process in place, each new starter is unique.
It's different. Yeah. Fair play.
So how you communicate, or how your team communicate to that new starter, and how that new starter listens, comprehends, applies that learning will be different. I think the other thing to bear in mind is there's also, just because we might be experienced in terms of our knowledge as a physio or a sports therapist, or as an office manager, or whatever roles and functions you've got within your clinic, doesn't mean that we can absorb everything in 5 minutes. So you can equally, overdo it by having somebody walk through the door and get a 200-page manual. Watch this, do that, do the other. This is George, Mary, Fred. The tea's there, the coffee's there. Don't touch that. Touch this. Touch the other. And you kind of go.
I'm having a bit of a cringe-worthy moment there, Phil. I definitely know when I realised that this was an important part of our business. I think I actually did that to somebody. I just gave him a massive file. Went, right, we're going to go through this. How they still stayed with us, I don't know, because I think I scared them to death day one. So, no, I think some really good points there, and I think it's definitely something that we'll talk about, and I know we'll continue to talk about, and we'll be continuing to make content for things like this within our academy.
Pick it up again, but
yeah. I think for me, then it takes us into when we're talking about. It's a question we're asked an awful lot. A lot of people recognise that when they bring staff in. It's a question I get asked an awful lot, is what KPI should we hold them accountable to? And it's a really, really interesting question, because it was never a question was asked to me 15 years ago, for example. What was, when we were kind of developing our private practices, it was nothing. Every business course I went on in the therapy world, no one ever asked that. They just kind of said, it was a very bit sales and marketing. It was very much about, how are you making sure that all of your clients are doing the rehab and stuff in it. But I think more and more things that were common practice within most business organizations have started to filter in. Hopefully we're a part of that, and to say that, we're getting people to recognize what performance markers we should be judging your business. I guess the challenge then is, how does that filter down to measure performance as an individual therapist, and how do we define what good is? And the reason I make the link is because, in my opinion, how do we start judging individuals about what good is or great is, if you want to go from good to great? Is it Jim Collins, whatever, wrote the book? Okay. If during the induction we're not telling people what we believe is great, or we highlight what's great, and how we measure what is great performance or great customer experience or good customer journey within an organization. So for those of you who are considering and thinking we need to put some more performance measures in, my question always is that, is it during all of your staff training, is it clear what you believe is good and what you believe great is, and what you believe that you should be doing within your organization? Because I think that then links back to then, well, how do we measure that?
Yeah. And I think just building on that, Andy, I think the other thing is we're often talking to business owners about performance information about the business. And sometimes there can be a confusion that those same performance measures, KPIs, are the ones that you would give to your colleagues in the clinic.
Yeah.
And the truth is that many of Andy's 6 favorites, if you don't know what they are, then go and have a look on the academy, and we can share some information on there with you. But how your business functions is a product of the effort that your team put in and you put in to achieve whatever it is you're trying to achieve. Now, some of those are financial indicators. And if you're a clinician employed, you're probably not terribly bothered about those financial indicators. In fact, they might serve as a bit of a disincentive for you.
I agree with that.
Because, if the business is going well, then actually you can think, well, I might be paid okay in the marketplace, but, he or she as the business owner is making a load of money. And of course, we don't then necessarily understand that the amount of money that we might take for an appointment isn't profit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people who get confused by, well, we charge 50 quid, 70 quid, 80 quid, 100 quid, whatever it is, wow, and I only get paid £15 an hour, £10 an hour, whatever it happens to be. So there's a lack of understanding necessarily. And why would an employee need to understand the difference? But actually it can, that in its own right can be a disincentive. So you have to think carefully about what measures, and I would always use the word measure rather than a target or a PI for a person, because for us it's about learning and improvement.
Correct.
So if you give me a target of 5, if I hit 4, does that mean I failed? But I'll never go more than 5 because you haven't asked me to do more than 5.
Okay. Yeah.
Because you set me a target. So unless you're gonna give me a bonus, I'm not going to go beyond my target of 5. Why would I? I've done 5, and this is what happens in a sales environment. Well, I would argue that in our world, although there's an element of sales, and I know that's a separate topic and can be a dirty word within the therapy world. But if we're on about providing good quality information that enables people to make an informed choice about whether or not they want to buy some more, then that kind of makes sense. So I think of things as measures in employment terms, employee terms. Measures help us to learn and improve, both as a business and as an individual, about what we're doing well and what we could do better.
And I think, and I totally agree. And I think also, just to kind of add to that, would be, I think in the therapy world, for me, for therapists who don't get or do get put off by financial targets, or it's something that doesn't motivate them, should we say, and that's what, as a good leader, surely it is. We're trying to motivate our team to be the best they can be in the environment they want to be in. It's understanding if we are going to measure them against what we believe is good or great, explaining why.
Mm.
You know, are we using that as a baseline measure? What does that say? You know, and I'll always refer to client retention or journey length. One of the things that I'm very passionate about that, and I talk about that, is that, and it's one that has been challenged. And I think a few years at Therapy Live, I think the first Therapy Live, we talked about ethical pathways and ethical sales, was the fact of, I still believe that we undertreat in a lot of cases, and people aren't actually at their final goal of where they want to be in life. And still, as therapists, we have these abundance of skills and expertise that we can help people improve their lives even further if we're brave enough sometimes to ask those questions. So, you know, that normally for me is, if a good journey length, that's normally that we've gone above and beyond to make sure that our customers feeling, or our patient or our client, however you choose to do, is in a really strong position and potentially in a more confident position and able to do more and enjoy life more, which for me is a really positive outcome. So, you know, I think it's important that you as a business recognize what it is important to you as a business. How do those measures then filter down? How do you explain those across to your team? And then also, with your business hat on, understand financially what that means as well. But that's something that not always is a motivator while being shared.
And I think again, just building on that, I think the other thing, and in mentioning NHS and private practice, it isn't to judge one or the other, but if you think about the role of the NHS and the role of physiotherapy in the NHS, the direction, the protocols, the processes that are in place within an NHS environment, and then you think about private practice, the two are completely different, because the models are completely different. So actually, if you've developed your knowledge and experience clinically within perhaps an NHS setting, and you're looking to move across into a private practice setting, or even moving between private practices, you would necessarily see a difference in terms of what the end goal is, and the scope and the capacity, and in some instances perhaps the access to the equipment and the resources that you might have in the private sector, which again doubles back to onboarding.
Yeah, that's what I was going to
because
think,
in a case it's a very different setting. So help me to use my skills in your setting effectively. So that links onboarding. It also links those measures.
No, I totally agree.
And why we're in a different environment, and what good looks like in that sense.
So a bit of a question for you then, Rick. So for me, all of this comes, and I know we did our last podcast was all about our latest webinar, which is on the 25th of August. Have I got that right? 7 p.m.
I have, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
About
and
time
it's all
I got
about
it right.
putting your vision into practice.
Put your vision into practice. So if you get onto the Eventbrite link,
which includes,
it will be available afterwards.
If
you can't watch it live, don't worry. We're going to be sharing it where you can get hold of it afterwards. So we talk about that, and both of us are very passionate and very about having setting the vision. So, and one of the things that you mentioned was how we link the vision of the business to then obviously delivering feedback. So do you want to just expand on that for us a bit?
I'll do it a little bit. And the good news is, in this upcoming Therapy Live business, we're going to be talking quite
18th
a lot more.
of September. Well, the link will be also in the...
We're also going to be talking about feedback as one of the exciting components of the content there. So look out for what's coming out on social media from Physio Matters and Therapy Live for that one. So massive assumption that an organization has a vision. In a small organization, that's often within the head of the business owner, or if there are a couple of business owners, then often they've got different visions in their head, but they think they're going in the same direction, which can sometimes be interesting. And as we've found, and as we've been working with various colleagues over the years, so feedback, I think it really depends who's asking for the feedback.
Okay.
So for me, it could be you as the business owner. So how are you going to know whether you're on course for your direction? You know, what goals have you set? It could be your clients, patients, customers giving feedback. It could be your employees or your associates. How will they know what good looks like? And how do they know whether or not they're performing? Now, some of the answer in that could well be in the measures that you're choosing to use. But for me, it's a combination of all of that, and actually sitting down to understand how the various elements of your business can provide you with feedback. So for me, a cash flow forecast and a reconciliation and a bank statement or a P&L account at the end of the month is feedback. Just the same as doing surveys or kind of exit polls or discussions or follow-ups with clients that have perhaps finished their current journey with you. With employees who are new on board and perhaps 3 months into the role, and you're sitting down and giving them some feedback on what's working well, what's not working so well. And that employees, associates within the organization also feel that they can give you some feedback about what's working and what's not working so well for them or within your business. So feedback is I find fascinating, and it can be the lifeblood of an organization, but it can also cause some real consequences, particularly in instances where things are not going so well.
Yeah.
And everybody just keeps quiet, and it's kind of the accident waiting to happen. And it's interesting that I mentioned the accident waiting to happen because Dean Williams, our health and safety specialist, and I have just recorded a bit of video content for the EYC Academy, all about the accident. And it's kind of relating it to health and safety.
Yeah.
And actually, if you think about the consequences of an accident and then you work back to understand what the cause was, perhaps as you might do in a therapeutic sense in a treatment room with a patient, you're actually trying to work out how on earth they got injured in the first place, and therefore what is it you might do differently to help them so that they don't make the same mistake again, but also to put the strategies in place so that they can recover. So it's the same kind of conversation, but just with a health and safety bent. So that's quite interesting. So I hope that's given the listeners a bit of a link between vision and feedback, with more of that to come.
No, definitely. And I think it's, hopefully listeners, you can start to join up some of the dots. And as always, we'd love to hear from you. If there's any topics that you feel relevant that we're not talking about, but you think needs to be spoken about, them, as always, drop us messages. So you can either find us on LinkedIn. Both me and Phil are on there and active on LinkedIn, or the Elevate Your Clinic. Or you can drop us on the Instagram at Elevate Your Clinic, or on our Facebook, Elevate Your Clinic. Quite easy to find. You can
and what's the website?
Go through our website, www.elevateyourclinic.com. You can go through there. You can drop us an email at info@elevateyourclinic.com. So there's lots of ways. Please do feel free to reach out and ask us any questions. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to and if any of you fancy ever coming on and fancy coming asking us some questions, then again, feel free. We'd be love to do that. I have to make, just for some clarity, we have got our webinar 25th of August with Mr. Jack Chew, talking about vision and putting your vision into practice. And both Phil and I and a lot of our EYC Academy contributors are going to be alongside the Physio Matters and Therapy Live teams on the 18th of September. So make sure that you get your tickets for that also. We look forward to sharing more of our content and our knowledge and our experiences to help you improve and run your therapy businesses even better.
So Andy, until next time.
Thanks very much for your time, Phil. I'll see you
Take
soon.
care.